In a 1971 interview with Newsweek magazine, an American diplomat going by the name George Ball, I suppose he wasn't going by the name George Ball, that was his name, but he gave what was perhaps the greatest quote ever on the subject of nostalgia when he said, "Nostalgia is a seductive liar." The context, of the interview itself was that we should not let the past get in the way of our nation becoming a better nation going forward. Nostalgia is a seductive liar. Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Andrew Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear, of course, in the poetry discussion playlist here on the channel. Now approaching 700 poems strong. The poem in question is House of Hospitalities by Thomas Hardy, and it reads as such. Here we broached the Christmas barrel, pushed up the charred log ends. Here we sang the Christmas carol and called in friends. Time has tired me since we met here, when the folk now dead were young, and the viands were outset here, and quaint songs sung. And the worm has bored the viol that used to lead the tune, rust eaten out the dial that struck night's noon. Now no Christmas brings in neighbors, and the new year comes unlit. Where we sang the mole now labors, and spiders knit. Yet at midnight, if here walking, when the moon sheets wall and tree, I see forms of old time talking, who smile on me. Now, the term nostalgia, pretty clearly, I think, what is going on here. I don't think I have to make the case for what is going on here in this poem being nostalgic. I think it's pretty definitionally nostalgic. Nostalgia is a word that is very interesting. So I stole this from Wikipedia, but bear with me. Nostalgia is a sentimentality for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. The word nostalgia is a neoclassical compound derived from the Greek consisting of nostos, a Homeric word meaning homecoming, and algos, meaning pain. The word was coined by a 17th century medical student to describe the anxieties displayed by Swiss mercenaries fighting away from home. Described as a medical condition, a form of melancholy in the early modern period, it became an important trope in Romanticism. Nostalgia is associated with a longing for the past. Its personalities, possibilities, and events, especially the good old days or a warm childhood. There is a predisposition caused by cognitive biases, such as rosy retrospection, for people to view the past more positively than the future more negatively. When applied to one's beliefs about a society or institution, this is called declinism, which has been described as a trick of the mind and as an emotional strategy, something comforting to snuggle up to when the present day seems intolerably bleak. The scientific literature on nostalgia usually refers to nostalgia regarding one's personal life and has mainly studied the effects of nostalgia as induced during these studies. Emotion is a strong evoker of nostalgia due to the processing of these stimuli first passing through the amygdala, the emotional seat of the brain. These recollections of one's past are usually important events, people one cares about, and places where one has spent time, cultural phenomena such as music, movies, television shows, and video games. as well as natural phenomena such as weather and environment, can also be strong triggers of nostalgia. So, when we take that definition into account and we take in the original quote to account, nostalgia is a seductive liar, we get a little bit of a different idea on what nostalgia is besides Norman Rockwell paintings. Nostalgia is something which is very dangerous, as George Ball had been warning. You cannot let the past diffuse the present and the future. I'm going to read this poem again, and I want to read this poem with a question in mind. I want you to tell me at the end of this poem who is the speaker. Here we broached the Christmas barrel, pushed up the charred log ends. Here we sang the Christmas carol and called in friends. Time has tired me since we met here, when the folk now dead were young, and the viands were out set here, and quaint songs sung. And the worm has bored the veal that used to lead the tune, rust eaten out the dial that struck night's noon. Now no Christmas brings in neighbors, and the new year comes unlit, where we sang the mole now labors and spiders knit. Yet at midnight, if here walking, when the moon sheets wall the tree, I see forms of old time talking who smile on me. Now, I think it is very difficult to really have any idea of who our speaker is, but we can say some things about him. He's talking about his past, and they called in friends. Here we sang the Christmas carol. Here we called in friends. At some point, our speaker was a very popular guy, or at least within the group that was considered happening. He had friends. They had parties. There were things going on for our speaker. Our speaker was young and vibrant. Is he that now? Well, that very next stanza tells us, time has tired me since we met here, when the folk now dead were young. So it seems that our speaker is advanced in age and probably has lost many of his friends. Probably, or perhaps, I guess I should say, feels that he outlived use, feels that he outlived vibrance, feels that he outlived his time. Why can we say that? Well, we know one more thing about this speaker. We know that he had friends in his youth. We know that he feels worn out now. But we also know he stalks this place at midnight. He stalks this place when others are sleeping. Not just has he outlived his time, he is out-awaking his time. Our speaker really seemingly has a diminished present. This longing for the old time, longing for the past, has prevented our speaker from setting down plans and roots for the future, has stopped our speaker from earning a today in the wake of yesterday. This nostalgia has stopped our speaker from enjoying the rest of his life. As George Ball said, you cannot let the past prevent the future. Nostalgia is a seductive liar. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.